Well, friends, here we go. So today I'm going to talk to you about the second framework that I focused on. That was neurological music therapy, otherwise known as NMT, and that's how I will be referring to it as we keep going. So an overview of NMT. First off, this is a musical framework compared to some of the other frameworks that we've been talking in class. It was developed by Dr. Michael Tout and some of his colleagues um, at the Biomedical Research and Music at Colorado State University. Um, that was first in the late 1990s. Tout's definition for neurologic music therapy is as followed. It's a therapeutic application of music to cognitive, sensory, and motor dysfunctions due to neurologic disease of the human nervous system. NMT is comprised of a lot of research-based evidence systems that standardize the different clinical techniques, um, and that falls into sensory motor training, speech and language training, and cognitive training. Um, and the cognitive training falls into neurologic rehabilitation, neuropediatric therapy, neurogeriatric therapy, and neurodevelopmental therapy. And we'll get into that more later on. But the clinical techniques of this, it focuses on the therapeutic goals in rehabilitation and the development and adaptation. So NMT, as I had said earlier, there's a lot of scientific evidence that falls under NMT. The techniques provide the framework with structure, and that explains the physiological, neurological, and psychological bases of music therapy. And that falls into three different things, or four, sorry. First is the neurological rehabilitation. And so this, um, and that, oh, sorry, I lost my notes. This deals with clients who have a cerebral vascular accident, traumatic brain injury, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and Huntington's disease. The next is the neuropediatric therapy. And this is with clients who have muscular dystrophy, TBI, different surgeries, and diseases such as cancer. A third one is neurogeriatric therapy. This is with clients that have Alzheimer's or other different dimensions as well as Huntington's disease, and same as neurological rehabilitation. Last one is neurodevelopmental therapy, and this is with clients who have cerebral palsy, autism, severe visual impairments, or developmental delays. So the thing with NMT is that the music therapists are trained for this specific kind of therapy, and they're trained in neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, brain pathology, medical terminology, rehabilitation of cognitive and motor function. So that's a lot. They really are focusing on the brain and the parts, and a lot that we've been doing in class this semester and in the past of like focusing on, okay, this is the specific brain part, and this is how it functions normally. But when things are changed and abnormal, then this is how it's affected, and this is what we can do to direct our clients back and help them. So the philosophy behind NMT, there's four essential paradigms. The first is neuroscience guided rehabilitation. And this integrates brain research and different like clinical studies that we've been looking at. The second is learning and training models. Third is cortical plasticity models, and the fourth is neurological facilitation models. These are aiming to provide an understanding of how the musical responses can be meaningfully translated into the cognitive, affective, and sensory-motor therapeutic responses. Moving forward. So the actual NMT model. There are 3 types of training. The first is sensory motor training. This aims to remediate gait disorders, improve posture, and facilitate upper extremity movement. Oh my goodness. So there's several different little frameworks even within sensory motor training that's used. The first is rhythmic auditory stimulation, otherwise known as RAS, and this is used a lot in NMT. It is actually the most researched in this framework. It's a technique that helps facilitate movements intrinsically rhythmical in a repetitive pattern. Uses the external time cue to regulate body movement. The second framework with this is pattern sensory enhancement, PSE. This is a technique using the different rhythmic, melodic, harmonic, and dynamic acoustical elements of music to provide temporal, spatial, and force patterns to structure and cue functional movements. And the last one for sensory motor retraining is therapeutic instrumental music playing, TIMP. This is the use of musical instrument playing to facilitate engagement in physical exercise and helps to stimulate functional movements as well. Nope, go back, sorry. Speech and language training. This is the second type. So this implements several techniques to remediate speech and language deficits or to maintain language for some patients as well. The first of this is melodic intonation therapy, MIT. This technique is for people with expressive aphasia, and it has some evidence of success with people who have apraxia as well. It's based on the development by Sparks and Holland, and they, oh my goodness, I lost my spot. Uses phrases that are sung, usually shorter phrases, and they're incorporated into what is known as speech singing. Underneath speech and language training, another is musical speech stimulation. This is MUSTIM. The purpose of this technique is to help produce non-propositional speech for those who also have aphasia. Third one under this is rhythmic speech cueing, RSC, beneficial for clients who have apraxia and fluency disorders. And the last one we're going to talk about is vocal intonation therapy, and that's VIT. And this is to train different elements of vocal control, such as inflection, pitch, breath control, and loudness. Jumping into cognitive training then. So this is essential for clients who have developmental disabilities, autism, attention deficit disorder, ADHD, traumatic brain injury, or other socio-emotional deficits. And within cognitive training, there's 4 different subcategories. The first one is auditory attention and perception training, memory training, executive functioning training, and last is psychosocial behavioral training. But I want to get into the actual music therapy applications of using this. So jumping back to the sensory motor training, applications for this, they're using RAS, which we talked about earlier, that rhythm to help improve the gait velocity, to modify like stride length, and to improve step cadence. So this is really focusing on like that, or using like a process with the pre-gait exercise, the gait training, and then advanced gait. So a clinical application for this would be someone who has Parkinson's disease or a brain injury due to cerebral vascular accident. And you're really focusing on increasing the walking speed with improved stability. Jumping to applications of speech and language training. The NMT approach with this, it lengthens the phrases to allow better opportunities for entrainment. MIT, the melodic intonation therapy, is also used in this, and I mentioned it a little earlier, and that is using like the melodic contour, but it also is using like rhythm in the phrases, which is a little bit different than just like the plain NMT approach. So NMT, it's trying to control the rate of the speech that has been with rhythmic speech cueing, and has been shown to help with those who have dysarthria. Developmental speech and language training can also be used to engage children with therapeutic experiences focused on improving that verbal communication. I'm already at 12 minutes. Guys, NMT has so much stuff. I'm so sorry. So I'll jump to cognitive training applications. Let's see. You're really using mnemonic applications here. So this would compose of some like games that you would be using like a variety of instruments. The therapist would choose maybe like a sophomore program, play examples of rhythmic patterns or instrumental sounds for clients, and they would ask the client to like pay attention and notice what is different between the first time and the second time, or if there was something. So like really engaging the brain, which I mean NMT is doing in general. So NMT for children, this is actually important, and I wanted to touch base on this because NMT with children, it has to have a different approach than with adults. And here I've got here. So from our textbook of Introduction to Approaches of Music Therapy, it says the rhythmic entrainment to an auditory stimulus may not be realistic with treating children who have developmental disabilities. And that's just because the neurological development in children is different from neurological rehabilitation in adults. That's not to say that like using that external stimulus to help like preterm infants who entrain to like a tactical rhythmic stimulus, that does not help them to have more of a rhythmic breathing. And a couple of the ways that is used here is that RAS and MIT as well. So in conclusion, this is a really established framework. There has been a lot of research and continuous research. RAS is the most research area in NMT, which, you know, makes sense. We've always been talking about how rhythm is that energizer and organizer and energizer. And that NMT has increasingly helped to develop the music therapy in the rehabilitation world. And here are my references. says, thanks guys.